Hi, I'm Elaine Friend. I'm an international consultant on high sensitivity, and I'm here today with my beloved mentor, Elaine Aron. Hello, Elaine. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Elaine. It's good to be here.
We're here today to talk about your new book, The Highly Sensitive Parent. It's a really important book, and I'm glad that it came out finally. Tell us a little bit about why you wrote it, if you would.
Well, I had highly sensitive parents begging me for this book back in 2012. And I actually got their contributions, which are in the book. I will wave it up here. And I am so glad that I wrote it, but it took me a long time to get it all pulled together. And I think one of the wonderful things about it is that, there's recent research on parenting in general that many parents are experiencing burnout. Well, I'll tell you, I think highly sensitive parents need help, but I think all parents need help. So I think my discovery has been that what's good for sensitive people is usually good for everybody. For example, secondhand smoke didn't turn out to be good for anybody, but we were the ones who complained about it.
Yeah.
So I think complaining about parenting is just natural. And in fact, there's a study that found that sensitive parents, two studies, are not quite as good as other parents. I'm convinced, pretty convinced, I don't have the data, that sensitive parents are being more honest about their bad moments.
Well, I mean, right, they process things deeply, right? So they notice, I mean, parents tell me all the time that they feel like they're doing a terrible job because their process, I always say, you're thinking about, 6 times more than the 80%ers are.
Sensitive parents find parenting more difficult, but they also find that they report that they are more creative and more attuned to their children. Well, that's exhausting to be that way. And they're noticing it. The DOES, we talk about depth of processing, overstimulation. So they're getting overstimulated. Emotional responsiveness, that's the attunement. And sensitive to subtle stimuli, that's also attunement, noticing what your little child needs before they go into a tantrum. So they're wonderful parents, but they really need help. And if there's anything that I emphasize in this book, it's that sensitive parents need help to do a good job. And where that help comes from might be a little bit more explaining to your co-parent, or it might be extended family, or it might be drawing some money out of that college fund in order to have help now, because your child will perhaps be a better student in college if you were there fully present as a parent.
I love what you said in the Getting Help chapter about how maybe if one person was going to stay home, like our inclination would be to stay home with the child, with the young child, but because we need time away to replenish our adult selves, it might be worth getting a little job, even if every penny of what you're making goes to some childcare, just so the stay-at-home parent can get out of the house for a little while. That made a lot of sense to me.
Oh, yes, I think so too. And there's a sort of a balance that goes like generally, if you're a mother, and not all parents are, not all stay-at-home parents are mothers, but in general, the stay-at-home person who also works ends up doing more of the work, unfortunately. So, but if you're a stay-at-home parent and don't have any kind of job, you do all the drudgery in the household. And I always say drudgery should be divided between partners. Just because somebody's enjoying their work out there and gone, 60 hours a week, doesn't mean that the person left home should do all the laundry and all the dishes and all the playing with the 2-year-old, which can be drudgery too.
I mean, I used to be so angry at my co-parent because they got to be texting or reading fiction or talking on the phone during the commute even. And or all that time that people who are in an office job get to do their personal email. Not true for everybody, but it was time away from the house that I didn't have.
You mean not driving, doing their email?
Yeah, well, whether they were commuting on the ferry or the subway or the bus or in the car, whatever.
But for us too, even commuting can be downtime if it's not too frustrating.
Yeah.
Depends on how exhausting it is.
If you have good noise canceling headphones.
Yes. So sensitive parents need downtime. That's what we're talking about too.
I wanted to talk about a little bit the highly sensitive person's 5 to Thrive, because when we were talking about your book and about the parents, it really made me think how well it fits in. Like, you need to know that you're highly sensitive, and this piece that you need to design a life that's compatible with sensitivity. And then the other one that you mentioned a lot in the book is having community, having meaningful relationships with other highly sensitive people. Like those things apply so well to the parents.
Yes, and the reframing your life, because you have to reframe your parenting and not compare yourself to some of those super moms. And who knows what's going on at home with them anyway, but the ones who are working all day and baking cookies for the party at school and having play dates every day, and their kids are taking piano lessons on and on. That's not necessarily the best way to parent even.
But that's the 80%. That's yes. Most of those people are not highly sensitive, right?
And most of them are probably burned out and trying to follow some model that doesn't work for them either. But
I mean, it's like that story about social media. Nobody puts their crappy days on Facebook. Exactly. You only get what people put out publicly. Mm-hmm. And so it does, but it can. I remember it making me feel really bad about myself that I was so exhausted from working and parenting, so exhausted.
Yes, I have a book here on the shelf about, it's actually when your child is 2 years old that mothers get most physically burned out in every system of their body, because they're kind of managing up to then, and then it's like 2 years of exhaustion, and it just goes. So self-care is so important for all parents, but sensitive parents should role model. I talk about us as being emotional leaders. And if we take care of ourselves, and if we learn to say, no, I can't be room mother at school this year, then other parents can hear that, and maybe room mothers are a bad idea. They shouldn't have to do so much work.
Yeah. So if HSP, highly sensitive parents, were getting together to talk about your book, why would that be helpful? What is it that we can share with each other? How can we help each other?
Well, honestly, I think first, hearing that other people are in the same position and having the same difficulties, that makes such a difference in terms of our forgiving ourselves for what we're doing. And then there's tips, just so many tips that you and I have forgotten because our children are grown, but people with little children are coming up with things all the time that I think they can help each other. That's why that's how the first book was written, The Highly Sensitive Person. People wanted a course, and I didn't know what to teach them, but I got people into my living room, and next thing I knew, they were telling each other how to deal with their sensitivity. I was taking notes.
And hence, HSP community is absolutely critical.
That's right.
Tell me just briefly the difference between the highly sensitive child book and the highly sensitive parent book.
Oh, people get that mixed up all the time, and it's extremely important because a highly sensitive parent may not have a highly sensitive child. And a highly sensitive child needs a parent who's not highly sensitive to read this book about highly sensitive children, maybe even more than the highly sensitive parent does. So the match is not always there. And I write in the child book about the advantages to a sensitive child to have a not highly sensitive parent. There's advantages both ways. So, it works just as in a marriage, it can work either way, or in a partnership, it can work either way. But the books are very different. And in fact, the highly sensitive parent, I explicitly did not talk about how to parent. I feel there's so many books elsewhere to do that. And that as soon as one starts to give advice, it sounds like it's one size fits all, but everybody's in a different position, especially whether they have anyone to help, enough help at home, and the temperament of the child. I know someone who's highly sensitive with a child who's not highly sensitive, extremely active, extremely intense. And of course, everyone's telling her how to parent. And it's all wrong advice. I mean, it might be good advice, but a highly sensitive parent can only sit down so many times and say, I know how bad you're feeling right now. And the kid is screaming, I don't want to hear that. I hate when you say that. Now what do you do?
Oh my gosh. I'm going to stop us here because I think that's a great teaser. And, Elaine Aron never wants really to sell her books. She's not a big saleswoman, and she's kind of I'm going to say you're an accidental self-help guru, because I know that was never your intention. You're a research psychologist, but she has really coined this term, done tons and tons of research, and it's so valuable to people who have this trait. And I'm so grateful that we are able to talk about it. It's so important that we read the books and really educate ourselves, because that's the first part of the HSP 5 to Thrive, is knowing that you have this trait of high sensitivity or sensory processing sensitivity, and that believing that it's real. So I really appreciate it. And for those of you who are seeing this live right here, I want to tell you that we will be discussing it on the Are You Highly Sensitive Live webinar. I'm inviting parents and others to come on and discuss Elaine's new book, The Highly Sensitive Parent, with me. It's on May 18th at 11 a.m. Pacific time, and it will be recorded so everyone can see it later. Thank you so much for being here, Elaine, and we'll talk again soon. Bye.
Bye. Bye, Elaine.